Hi, this is Shoshana Shia coming to you from Yerushalayim Era Kodesh with another Aliyah tip. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about 12 different ways that you can improve your Hebrew skills before you come to Israel. So that's looking at your speaking, reading, and writing, all of which are necessary and important if you're going to be living and hopefully working as well in Israel, in Eretz Israel. So tip number one is an easy-ish tip, something you could do wherever you are. You don't have to wait until you come to Israel, and that is to read the Chumash from the Hebrew itself. So get yourself a copy of the Chumash, the Bible, from the original Hebrew, and set yourself the task of reading a portion every day. If you can only manage a few words, or if you can only manage a sentence or two, make sure that you get into a cycle of reading your Chumash every day. And to help you along, to make sure that you've got the gist at least of what you're learning, I would recommend that you get yourself a copy of my husband's Parsha summaries. And from there you can read in English exactly what it is you were reading in the Hebrew. So if you have a good Chumash that has the translation as well, you can obviously get to further along to read word by word, line by line, and translate as you go along. That's also another way that you can improve your skills. So that's something that you can do from wherever you are. You don't have to wait to come to Israel before you start improving your Hebrew. Why is this important? Before we get to the rest of our list, I'll share a very, very quick story. When I'd been in Israel about 6 months, I think, could be 7 months. I hadn't yet finished Ulpan. I was still in Ulpan, I'll tell you that much. And Ulpan is usually 6 months. So I was here roughly about 6 months, or perhaps a little under that, when I went on a tiyul for Lag BaOmer with somebody from the neighborhood where I was living, and we went up north towards Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And on our way on the bus to go towards the Lag BaOmer celebrations in Meron, there was somebody on the bus who was very kindly giving us information about where it was that we were passing, some more information about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, other Tzadikim that are buried in the area, and everything that he spoke about was in Hebrew. Well, sitting next to me was a lady who'd been in Israel for well over 20 years, I think 23 years at least at the time, and she did not speak a word of Hebrew. And the intriguing thing for me was that she asked me to please help to translate for her what it was that the tour guide was saying as we went on our journeys towards Meron. And it was quite an eye-opener for me, and I very much recommend to you, if you're coming to Israel, which is something that any Jew could and should be doing, it's going to be important to learn Hebrew. Even though she managed to be here for 23 years, I would recommend putting in the effort, learning how to read Hebrew, learning how to speak Hebrew, learning how to write Hebrew. You're going to need it every day in one way or another, whether it's making a telephone call to the bank, whether it's reading a bill that comes along, whether it's looking at a road sign. There are all sorts of reasons as to why you're going to learn to need to learn Hebrew. And so let's get on with the list. Next on the list is to listen to children's songs in Hebrew. One of the teachers in the first Ulpan that I went to recommended to learn children's songs, and as she gave us an explanation, she says this is the way that you learn the music of the language. Every language has certain rhythm to it as you speak, and you learn to be familiar with the way that the Hebrew's rhythm goes by learning the songs. Another advantage of learning children's songs is that the words used, the vocabulary and the language used is going to be a little bit simpler, so you'll be able to start to pick up words that are of value to everyday life, and be able to then apply that from learning it in a fun way through listening to children's songs. You can learn to improve your vocabulary and get used to what is the nigun, the music, the rhythm that goes with the language of music. Tip number 3 is tip number 3, I missed out on number 1 that I had written down on my list, yeah? So we'll put number 1 as number 3 and then we'll get on with our list. Number 1 was really to join an Ulpan, which you can do even if you're in Chutz La'aretz. I did join an Ulpan before I came to Israel. I didn't join it early enough, but I joined one in any event. I did join one. You can join either in person or in today's time there are also ones that you can join online. So make sure to join an Ulpan of some sort. Tip number 4 is to watch children's stories in Hebrew. There are many that you can find on YouTube that also have subtitles. I would recommend watching twice. Watch once in the Hebrew, try to see how much you can understand, and then go through it again in the English, in the Hebrew obviously with the English subtitles if your English is your language. If you're watching me in English, I presume that you're speaking English. So watch with the subtitles to help to know that you're understanding the words correctly. And as you go along with any of these tips that I give you, I would say to keep yourself a little notebook or your own personal dictionary that you develop and pick up 2, 3, 4, 10 words, new words every day if you can. If you can do 10 words every day, and there's 365 days in a year, you're going to get to have over 3,000 words in your vocabulary. So write down those new words and get to use them regularly in one format or another, whether you're speaking, whether you're writing, whether you're using it to help you to understand whatever you're reading, whether you listen to some songs and then you do some reading in the Chumash, you're bound to pick up something that's similar or the same, because the words are Hebrew is Hebrew. Although there is a difference between the Hebrew from the Chumash and the spoken Hebrew of today, so there will be differences. In spoken Hebrew of today, there are also words from other languages that have cropped in. So it's of benefit to learn both, really. Tip number 5 is to start reading Hebrew books. You can start off with children's books again, and the advantage of reading children's books is that you can read with the nikud. Often the print could be a little bit larger. If you're reading some simpler stories, then you could, as I say, pick up your grammar and your vocabulary in a little bit of a simpler manner. Something that I would highly recommend, which is a lot of fun to do also, is to read either Tzadikim stories or to read stories of the lives of the rabbis, which are written in Hebrew. You'll gain a lot about the history of Am Israel, of the nation of Israel, at the same time as you're picking up your Hebrew language skills. If you're wanting something that's not really from the Chumash, although there is an idea from it connected in the book, and that is kindness to animals, we have a book out which is Tuvia Finds His Freedom. It's available in both English and in Hebrew. Our friend Dana, who very kindly translated it into Hebrew for us, did an amazing job, and some of her vocabulary is a little bit on a higher level, but you'll still gain by reading both. So if you can find any sets that are similar to that as well, where you have the English book plus the Hebrew, it's good to read, familiarize yourself with what the English is while you're reading the Hebrew, or use the English just to look back and to refer and to see whether you've been able to understand and translate it correctly. So that's another option when reading your children's stories. If you have other books that you can read, go for it. You don't have to limit yourself to children's books, but if you're a beginner, then that's an amazing way to start. Tip number 6 is listen to Israeli radio, which you can find nowadays if you do a search online. If you manage to find any other Shiurim or anything in Hebrew that you can listen to, that's also an amazing way to pick up some Hebrew. Tip number 7 is to read newspapers in Hebrew. I don't know if it still exists, but when I made Aliyah, there used to be a newspaper that had the Nukud, it also had certain words that were translated for you, and more of the, as you progressed through the newspaper, there would be less and less of the words that had the Nukud, or less and less that had translation with them. I don't remember exactly how the newspaper went too well. I didn't read it all that often, I'm afraid, but it's an excellent way to pick up some Hebrew vocabulary. If you are new to Israel, there are also certain newspapers, there used to be, that you could sign up a subscription, get a reduced package that you have when you newly make Aliyah. That's another way to be able to get your Hebrew. Or if you are already in Israel, there are lots of free publications that you can pick up along the way. You get them quite often outside supermarkets and so on. And if you pick up one of those, even if you just manage to read headlines, that's also a way to pick up some vocabulary. And make sure that you get to read different fonts. It's quite important to read different fonts. I could tell you a joke about the importance of fonts, but I'll keep that for now. So tip number 8 is read websites that are in Hebrew. Important websites that you're going to need if you're living here in Israel are things like your Kupat Cholim, which is your health, whether you join Miuchedet, Maccabi, Klalit or Leumi. Those are the 4 that are available for you. Even if you're living in the diaspora in Chutz La'aretz, you can start to go onto one of those websites and familiarize yourself and get to know some of the terms that are used more frequently. Try to give yourself either a certain amount of time, that even if you master one sentence, that's another sentence that you've mastered to be able to read. If you can read it and understand it, so much the better. But even if you just get to read it, you're making progress. Other websites that you could learn would be related to the municipality, related to the water, related to Bituach Leumi, which is the national health. So all of these have websites available. If you interact in any of the online groups, you can be able to get to hear about any other important websites. And if they have an English or an option that's in your language, try to switch to the Hebrew, see how much you understand. You can always go back to the English and see if you've understood it correctly. Tip number 9 is work through grammar books. One that we like to recommend is Ha-Yesod. There are a number of grammar books available. I received one for free when I signed up for my Ulpan here in Israel, and it's tremendously of benefit. It takes you through, it explains to you very much simple grammar, simple vocabulary, sentences that are important for day-to-day use, and you can use that and practice it yourself, as we'll get to in a tip coming up. So get hold of any of the grammar books that you're able to and work through them. Give yourself even 10 minutes every day. You'll start to add up, it builds up, and before you know it, you'll be having acquired some Hebrew skills. Tip number 10 is learn Torah in Hebrew with a teacher. I'm a little bit biased. I recommend learning with my husband, for obvious reasons. Reason number 1 would be that he's a really patient teacher. He comes with a lot of sense of humor, with a lot of wisdom. You'll get to know all sorts of other information as you're learning with him. But if you learn with somebody like my husband, I'll put a link in the show notes below to his website that you can link online with him. But if you learn with somebody like my husband, then you can get to break down all the words, break down the grammar, get to learn a subject of your choice from the Torah, whether it's Chumash, whether you're going through halacha, whether you're going through some chassidut, maybe some stories of the rabbis, one of those children's books that you want to learn. Whatever it is that your choice of a sefer of your choice that you feel like learning, you can learn it together with somebody like my husband, and practice listening to his reading and try reading yourself. see how much you can translate, and from that you get to improve your Hebrew skills, which you'll need in day-to-day living here in Israel. Tip number 11 is to set yourself 5 to 10 minutes that whatever you're doing, let's say you're going around the kitchen and you're about to prepare a meal, set yourself 5 to 10 minutes that you describe to yourself exactly what you're doing in Hebrew. So if you're walking to the refrigerator, you're going to take out a vegetable, let's say. You're going to take out a vegetable and perhaps some rice or what have you. Tell yourself what it is that you're doing. Ani holechet lemakarer, I'm walking to the fridge. Or you can say hamakarer sheli, my fridge. I'm going to take out melafefon, I'm going to take out tapuach adama, tapuach eitz. Whatever it is that you're having, tapuach adama is the vegetable, tapuach eitz is the fruit. Sounds logical if you understand the words that I used. What's the benefit of that is, number one, you're going to be picking up day-to-day vocabulary and you're going to be discovering where it is that there are words that you don't know. Do you know the words for whatever it is that's in your refrigerator? You're going to need them if you go to the supermarket, whether it's orez, which is rice, whether it's pasta, which is pasta, that's nice, whether it's whatever the items are, you'll find that some of them are the same as the language of whatever country you came from. There are lots of words, as I say, that crept into the English, into the Hebrew. But it's a really fun exercise. It's actually, if you take it seriously, it's a difficult exercise. And if you're going to do it together with the notebook that I mentioned that you should have alongside you, write down all those words that you discover that you didn't know, look them up in the dictionary, and when you get to do your telling yourself what it is you're doing, whether you're cleaning your floor or you're going to make a telephone call or whatever it is that you're doing, try to describe to yourself and do that in Hebrew. Pick up your Hebrew skills. You'll also figure out where it is that you're needing to improve your grammar, and that's a good tip. It's a tip that was given to me when I was in Ulpan. The Ulpan teacher had met somebody else who had improved her skills tremendously, and she asked what it was that she did that helped her, and that was the answer. So now I'm sharing it with you, and you don't even have to be in Israel already to hear it. If you're living still in Chutz La'aretz, there's a great tip for you. Tip number 12 is put labels next to items that you have. For example, next to your refrigerator, put a label as to what it is if you don't yet know that word. It'll help you both to write down correctly in the Hebrew what the word is, put it next to the refrigerator, and whenever you look at it, you'll be able to see until you be able to get used to what that word is. Once you're used to it and you're using it regularly, obviously you can take your label down again. So that's a little tip. I thought of another tip along the way. Let's see if I can jog my memory a little bit. What was it that reminded me? No, for now we've got 12 tips for you. If I think of any others, I'll share them in another video. I hope that's been of benefit for you. Let me know what you're doing to help you with your improving Hebrew. Let me know how much Hebrew you've managed to acquire and where you are in your stage of making Aliyah. Are you still in Chutz La'aretz? Are you planning to come? Have you managed to start your pilot trip? Are you already here in Israel? How are you getting on in your journey of learning and mastering this language of ours? I remembered that other tip, and I'll share it with you quickly. It's not only to tell yourself what it is that you're doing, but if you can get into conversations with other people, whether if you manage to find somebody who's in Chutz La'aretz, if you're still there, then well and good. If you don't, quite often you'll find on some of these social media groups that there are Israelis who are prepared to speak to others, and with modern technology, you can link in, even if you're in Chutz La'aretz, you can link up with somebody on Zoom, even if it's for 5 minutes that you have a conversation. It's of benefit to you. So if you want a successful Aliyah, good place to start is to improve your Hebrew, even if you're in Chutz La'aretz. That's my 12 or 13 tips for you, and I hope that some of them have been of benefit for you. And with that, I wish you a very blessed day from a very hot and sunny Yerushalayim, Kodesh. Ciao for now.